In the shadowed corners of our world where fear wears the face of a leader and silence is enforced with iron fists, Korea stands as a chilling monument to totalitarian rule. Born in 1948 under Kim Il-sung, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea began not as a symbol of independence but as a machine of control. Cloaked in the ideology of juche self-reliance, it preached pride while crushing individual will. Streets of Pyongyang gleamed with statues, but behind closed doors, whispers turned to screams. Families learned not to speak, not to question. The Korean War of the 1950s only deepened the darkness. As North and South tore into each other, so did the regime tear into its people. Sowing seeds of lifelong surveillance, betrayal, and suspicion, dissenters vanished, their names erased, their children punished. Then came the songbun system, a caste-like apparatus that divided citizens into loyal, wavering, and hostile classes based on ancestry and perceived loyalty. One's job, food rations, education, and even spouse were determined by it. Generations paid for a grandfather's wrong word. Entire bloodlines were blacklisted. Meanwhile, a labyrinth of prison camps began to spread. Camp 22, Camp 14, and Yodok became the nation's hidden. Within these walls, survival wasn't just brutal, it was the only goal. Public executions served as warnings. Starvation and torture became routine. One man, Shin Dong-hyuk, born in Camp 14, recalled watching his mother and brother be executed. He didn't flinch. Love was not taught there. Only fear, only obedience. Even foreigners weren't safe. Otto, warmbier, a young American arrested for taking a poster, was returned home in a coma. He died days later. His fate echoed the silence that covers so many. The world saw his body. But North Koreans disappear without trace, their fates known only to their captors. Despite these horrors, the spirit of rebellion flickered. In Camp 18 in the 1980s, prisoners rose in a doomed revolt. They were slaughtered, but their defiance lives in memory. These are not stories of the past. Under Kim Jong-un, repression has deepened. His youth gave hope, but his rule brought more purges, more propaganda, and a fiercer grip on minds and borders. In the misty mountains of North Korea lie hidden chambers of horror. The Kwanliso political prison camps where even whispers are punishable by death. Established in the 1950s by Kim Il-sung to erase opposition, these gulags multiplied like tumors. By their peak, they held over 200,000 people. Camp 22 near the Chinese border covered more land than Los Angeles. Here prisoners worked in mines, forests, and factories until they died. Their crimes listened to foreign radio, making a joke, being related to someone who once doubted the regime. They toiled in silence. They starved. They suffered. Defectors described daily horrors: rats eaten to survive, forced abortions, torture chambers, and children born and raised to know only brutality. One former guard revealed, Camp 22 has a place where the hair on your neck stands forever. In Camp 15, 2 prisoners, despite the odds, fell in love and secretly exchanged coded letters. They were discovered and executed. Yet their story lingers like a ghost of defiance. Few escaped. Shin Dong-hyuk did. His memoir, Escape from Camp 14, chilled the world. Born behind fences, he knew nothing of life beyond chains. His escape was not just physical. It was mental, spiritual, generational. And yet the silence persists. The regime denies the camps exist. Satellite images say otherwise. Testimonies flood out from defectors. The United Nations in 2014 compared these atrocities to Nazi death camps. But unlike the past, these camps still operate, still devour. North Korea has used fear like oxygen, and public executions. Their theater. Held in markets and fields, they force children and parents alike to watch as bodies collapse under bullets. A man executed for owning South Korean films. A woman for selling herself to feed her child, all while crowds are commanded to cheer. Self-criticism sessions extend the theater of pain. Workers are forced to confess crimes, pledge loyalty, and denounce others. One defector called it the theater of the absurd, where truth is scripted and lies are mandatory. Through every cell and spectacle, the regime sends a message. Your life is not your own. Beyond the barbed wires and propaganda, posters and other torment gnaws daily at North Koreans. Hunger. Despite the country's lush landscapes and rice fields, millions have faced starvation. The arduous march of the 1990s claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. With the Soviet Union gone and crops failing, families boiled tree bark, ate insects, and buried children in unmarked graves. Desperation was everywhere. One defector recalled, "We chewed roots with tears." Aid arrived from the world, but much of it went to the military. The regime's policies made food a weapon, rewarding loyalty and starving dissent. Anything to survive. A schoolteacher turned vendor became known as the tofu queen. Her grit, an act of rebellion. Meanwhile, hospitals crumbled. Surgeries were done by candlelight. Clinics lacked basic supplies. Doctors stitched wounds with fishing lines. Malaria returned. Tuberculosis spread. People died not from disease but from neglect. And still the people fought to live. Black markets for medicine grew. One woman in Sinuiju called the medicine auntie ran a secret stall saving lives the state had abandoned. Meanwhile, outside, its borders. North Korea was quietly exporting another resource. Its people, in the forests of Russia, deserts of the Middle East, and construction sites across Asia. North Koreans labored in silence, controlled by minders, watched, threatened. Most of their wages went to the regime. One manager admitted they were slaves in suits. Even in restaurants abroad, smiling waitresses served kimchi while dreaming of escape. Some did. Many didn't. They lived behind invisible bars. Their pain funded missiles. Their suffering bought parades. But even their human connection flickered. Some fell in love. Some made friends. Some shared forbidden stories. Hope, however quiet, never fully vanished. For those who managed to escape the hermit kingdom, freedom is not the end of suffering, it is the beginning of an entirely new ordeal. The journey out of North Korea is a gauntlet of betrayal, terror, and unrelenting risk. Most defectors begin by crossing the Tumen or Yalu rivers into China, often under the cover of night, their hearts pounding, their futures uncertain. But the moment their feet hit foreign soil, the danger doesn't end. It simply changes form. In China, they are not refugees, they are fugitives. Beijing does not recognize them as people fleeing tyranny, but as illegal migrants. If caught, they are forcibly repatriated to North Korea, where brutal consequences await: torture, imprisonment, or public execution. Despite the deadly risks, thousands continue to flee. They are driven by famine, persecution, or the unbearable weight of knowing that truth exists somewhere beyond the barbed wire. Their reasons are varied. Some want to reunite with loved ones, others want to speak freely, and many just want to eat. Women make up the majority of defectors, and their plight is especially harrowing. Many are captured by human traffickers, sold into forced marriages with poor Chinese men, or exploited in brothels. Even those who survive these horrors remain at constant risk of being reported to Chinese authorities. They live in fear, silent, hidden, always one phone call away from being dragged back across the border. One woman speaking from a safe house in Southeast Asia described it best: escaping North Korea was not freedom, it was trading one nightmare for another, just with different faces. Her voice trembled as she recounted nights spent sleeping in chicken coops, days begging for food, months hiding in attics with no windows, no heat, and no hope. But amidst this darkness, flickers of kindness shine through. Chinese villagers offering warm soup to strangers, underground missionaries guiding families across mountain paths, and South Korean NGOs building secret networks to rescue those trapped in limbo. These operations, often called the Asian Underground Railroad, stretch across China, Laos, Vietnam, and Mongolia. Given forged documents, and quietly guided to embassies where they can seek asylum. The journey can take months, it can take years. Some never make it, they vanish, caught, sold, or silenced. But some do arrive in Seoul, in Toronto, in Los Angeles, and then another journey begins. The journey of becoming free inside. For many defectors, adjusting to life outside North Korea is overwhelming. They must learn new languages, navigate strange cultures, and unlearn decades of indoctrination. They struggle with guilt, survivor's guilt, for those left behind. Cultural shock can feel paralyzed in the bustling cities. The endless choices, the freedom to speak what others take for granted, can feel like drowning to someone who has only known silence and submission. A former soldier now living in South Korea described his first time in a supermarket. I saw 50 types of toothpaste and wept. In North Korea, we didn't even have soap. I stood in that aisle for an hour, not knowing what to do. Psychological trauma runs deep. Many suffer PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Others fear speaking up, conditioned by years of surveillance. Some cannot even trust their own thoughts. They wonder, what if I'm caught? What if this is a trick? To ease the transition, South Korea established the Hanawon Center, a government-run facility where defectors receive psychological support, basic education, and social integration training. Here, survivors learn everything from using an ATM to navigating public transport. But no center can heal every scar. Many defectors still face discrimination in the South. They're called Balginji, or Reds, treated as second-class citizens by some. Others are seen as burdens or spies. Despite these challenges, countless defectors rise. They become students, artists, authors, and activists. Park Yeonmi, who escaped at just 30, now speaks on international stages, her voice raw and brave. I crossed the Gobi Desert barefoot, she says, not because I was brave, but because I was desperate to live. Her memoir, In Order to Live, has opened eyes worldwide. She reminds us that behind every statistic is a name, a face, a story worth hearing. Not all stories are heard, though. Some defectors, unable to adapt, return to North Korea, often under pressure or illusion. The regime celebrates these returns with staged press conferences, parading returnees as proof of foreign deception. But most of these returns are born of loneliness, fear, or desperation, not love for the regime. Many end tragically, far from the cameras that once captured their confessions. Still, the tide is turning. Every voice that escapes adds pressure. Every video testimony chips away at lies. Every smuggled flash drive, every whispered prayer, every defector who chooses to speak becomes part of a growing resistance. one that the regime cannot control. As the international community peers through satellite images and defectors' testimonies, it faces a haunting question. What is the moral obligation of the world in the face of such entrenched systematic suffering? North Korea is not a mystery. It is a mirror, a reflection of what happens when power goes unchecked, when fear becomes currency, and when silence becomes strategy. Behind the high walls and uniform parades lies an ecosystem of terror, carefully curated and violently maintained. Over the decades, the United Nations has passed countless resolutions condemning the regime's abuses. Human rights organizations have released damning reports. Satellite images have mapped the prison camps in chilling detail. The 2014 UN Commission of Inquiry described the crimes against humanity in North Korea as without parallel in the contemporary world. Yet the regime remains defiant. It dismisses evidence as propaganda. It exploits global divisions. It plays diplomacy as theater while maintaining an iron grip on its people. Why has nothing changed? Because the world is entangled. China, North Korea's closest ally, serves as a buffer against Western influence. Russia, at times opportunistic, offers quiet support. South Korea, ever hopeful for reunification, walks a diplomatic tightrope. The United States, distracted by nuclear talks, has often prioritized arms control over human rights. Thus, the voices of North Koreans, starving, imprisoned, silenced, are too often drowned out by strategy. But even in this geopolitical chessboard, hope persists. Advocacy groups continue to push. Organizations like Liberty in North Korea rescue defectors and broadcasts uncensored media back into the North. Grassroots campaigns fund balloon drops filled with USBS radios and flash drives. Technology has become a tool of liberation. Information, the very thing the regime fears most, is slipping in. Inside the country, signs of quiet dissent are rising. Illegal markets operate under the radar. Smuggled South Korean dramas change perceptions. Young North Koreans exposed to outside ideas begin to question what they've been told. A small boy, after watching a forbidden film, reportedly asked his mother, "Why do they smile so much outside?" That simple question is a rebellion, and the diaspora is growing. Defectors are no longer hidden. They are organizing, advocating, documenting. Jang Jin-sung, once a poet for the regime, now runs a dissident news agency. Hyunseo Lee Lobi's governments, young North Korean YouTubers in Seoul share their experiences online, breaking the myth that North Koreans cannot adapt, speak, or dream. Their courage is contagious. Their truth is irrefutable. Still, real change must come from both outside and within. Governments must stop treating North Korean human rights as secondary. Aid must be monitored and directed to those who need it most. Technology must be leveraged to bypass censorship. But more than that, humanity must remember. Because North Korea is not just a country. It is a wound, a place where memory is forbidden. History is rewritten, and suffering is policy. But even wounds can heal. Even silence can break. Even fear can turn into defiance. Let this story be more than a documentary. Let it be a warning, a remembrance, a resolve. The people of North Korea do not ask for pity. They ask for visibility, for dignity, for remembrance. In the words of Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, there may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice. But there must never be a time when we fail to protest. North Korea is that time. This is that protest. Your witness matters.